believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Rendes, also known as Ricky Brains, and a great episode for you today. Today, we have returning guest attorney Brian Festa. He's also one of the co-founders of We the Patriots USA, which is a nonprofit organization, and they're constantly filing lawsuits and helping citizens all over the U.S. with religious freedom issues, medical freedom issues, parent rights, food safety issues, First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, and much more. So please check out their website, wethepatriots.org. Support organizations like theirs and also donate if you can. And on that topic, this is a value for value show. Of course, if you get some value out of this show, out of these conversations, please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. If you can't financially support the show, please rate the show, review the show, tell people about the show, and that helps a lot. But if you're in a good financial place, please consider supporting the show financially. We have a Patreon page where you can set up monthly donations. We have a PayPal account if you want to send a one-time donation. We also have a merchandise store with tons of hoodies, t-shirts, hats, tons of cool stuff, mugs. We have a crypto wallet if you want to send crypto. And you can find all these links in the show description, or you can go to the rippleeffectpodcast.com and click on support, and you can find all these methods of supporting the show there. So like I said, review the show, share the show. If you can't support financially, pick one of the ways of doing it. You can also go to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. That will bring you directly to our merchandise store. In the show description, you'll also find links to my music. If you like the music you hear on the show, consider downloading it, and that will also support the show. Last but not least, we have a Telegram group chat. If you want to chat with listeners, if you want to chat with myself, join the Ripple Effect Podcast group chat. That's it, my friends. Enjoy this conversation, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. Again, thanks for being with me, Brian. It's always nice to catch up. In regards to what's going on and catching up with all obviously you're involved with so many different things. You want to fill us in since last time we spoke? What's been going on? Obviously, we discussed just a little bit prior about Connecticut being in the news and a lot of these blue states now. All of a sudden, the science caught up, right? Even though we've been saying the same shit for 2 years, all of a sudden the science caught up, or the politics caught up, whatever it may be. But yeah, fill us in. What have you been up to, and any new news, and of course, and then we'll get into your thoughts on what's going on in the world.
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly when it was that we last spoke, Ricky, and thanks again for having me as always. But we have done so much in the last, I'm assuming it's been probably 5 or 6 months since I was on the show. I don't know, maybe it's been less, maybe it's been 4, but even so, even in the last 3 or 4 months, we have done an incredible amount of work, not just in Connecticut, but around the country with We the Patriots USA. One of our biggest lawsuits, as you probably know, was the New York healthcare worker lawsuit, which is still ongoing because the state of New York said that Governor Kathy Hochul and the commissioner of the Department of Public Health said that if you're a healthcare worker, you're not allowed to have religious exemptions, that somehow you're exempted from the Constitution if you're a healthcare worker, which obviously isn't true and isn't legal. We filed an emergency application for a stay, went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately, we didn't win on the emergency application. The good news is we were able, of course, to keep the lawsuit alive. It didn't get dismissed, so it's still being litigated. And when it gets finally heard on all of the merits, we do believe it'll end up back at the U.S. Supreme Court. It's just unfortunately for the healthcare workers, we couldn't get it immediately stopped. And we saw that at the federal level too. The CMS mandate, as you know, Biden's CMS mandate didn't get stopped. The OSHA mandate did, but the CMS mandate, they wouldn't grant an emergency stay on that either. because again, there's this myth out there that if you're a healthcare worker, this is so much more of a risk. This is so much more deadly. It's spreading. Even they believe in asymptomatic spread. They believe, we had Sonia Sotomayor during those oral arguments saying that there's 100,000 children that are seriously ill, critically ill, or on ventilators from Omicron, which wasn't true. It's just really, really crazy stuff. And unfortunately, like I said, we didn't get that in place, but we did get up to the Supreme Court. We were involved in the OSHA case, by the way. We, the Patriots USA, filed an amicus brief at the United States Supreme Court. We made some unique arguments that hadn't really been made by other organizations regarding individual rights and freedoms. And we do believe, based on some of the things we've heard, some of the justices saying, particularly Justice Kavanaugh, that they did read our brief, because some of the unique arguments were alluded to during the oral arguments. So we had an influence on that case, even though it wasn't a case that we brought. So that was pretty exciting. And then also, we have, so you asked specifically about Connecticut. We have a case right now that we're about to file. We're fully funding it, we the Patriots USA, but we do still need donations because it's very, very expensive. Critical race theory case. So we're not just involved in vaccine mandates cases and COVID stuff, as you know. I mean, medical freedom, religious freedom are a big part of our mission, but it's not the only thing that we do at We the Patriots USA. We fight for all constitutional rights. And one of those is the right to free speech, the right to oppose things, the right for parents to go to their school boards and say, I don't want this taught in my children's schools. And this case involved a couple of things. I mean, it involves critical race theory. It also involves sex ed that the parents didn't approve of. And really, they fought back. This is in Guilford, Connecticut, and this is what the parents allege, and this is going to be something that we intend to prove in court. But the attorneys that we connected them with, I should say, are going to demonstrate in court, is that they were retaliated against. When they spoke out, there was such horrible retaliation and harassment, not only against the parents, but also against their children, because they were seen as these supposedly white supremacist children. Because you oppose critical race theory, you must be a white supremacist. And they went to their school board. They actually primaried the school board members, and won in the primary. Unfortunately, lost in the general election against 3 of them. But they did, give them a run for their money, and they didn't like that. And so they endured a lot of harassment because of that. One parent alleges that her child was sexually assaulted as a result, and she says she has the video camera footage. She's seen it anyway, where the child was actually assaulted in school by his peers. So it's really horrific what happened. There's another allegation that a child was beaten up on the football field, and the staff and coaches just stood by and let it happen. Again, because these are the parents that opposed critical race theory, so their kids deserved this, I guess, was the mentality. That's what they're alleging. So that's a really horrific case, but it's a case very similar to the Loudoun County, Virginia case that you might be familiar with, critical race theory. And so we're opposing that. We think this is a toxic indoctrination in our public schools, and we intend to go out after it so that it's removed from public schools. So we will be filing a federal lawsuit against the Guilford Board of Education in Connecticut. We also have the Bill Salyer lawsuit. I don't know if you heard about that one. That's out of Minnesota. The retired U.S. Marine that was denied ivermectin. So he went to his local Walmart. He was critically ill. He went to Walmart, tried to get ivermectin from the Walmart pharmacy, and was told, no, we can't fill this for you. He got his doctor on the phone with the pharmacist. The pharmacist hung up on his doctor, saying, I don't care. I'm not filling this prescription. So that case is actually against Walmart and Hy-Vee supermarkets, which is a big supermarket chain out there in the Midwest. And it's going to be a big case. It's going to be a really, really big case. We've already filed that in federal court. We've already filed, our attorneys have filed that against Walmart on behalf of Bill and Carla Salyer, Bill and his wife. Bill tells just a really heart-wrenching story. This is a guy that served his country honorably in Somalia and at Camp David. Even he's a U.S. Marine, and he grew up on a farm in Iowa. And he tells the story that he resorted to taking horse paste because he couldn't get the ivermectin. And he said, it was the weirdest thing. I just had this flashback to my childhood of giving this paste to the horses, and here I am mixing it into whatever peanut butter or applesauce, whatever he's doing, trying to choke it down. But it's really sad. This is how we treat our veterans. That he had to resort to that. He did recover, by the way, with the horse pace. He did recover. He and his wife made a full recovery very shortly after they finally began taking that, because they were really critically ill. They were getting seriously ill until they took this stuff. We know it works. We know ivermectin works, hydroxychloroquine. We know the treatments. Zinc, vitamin D, all of the things that we talk about all the time in the medical freedom community. We know these things work, and they know these things work. That's the issue. They know they work because if they didn't work, they wouldn't be opposing them so vehemently. They're opposing them because obviously if they let people get a treatment, what's going to happen? They don't need the shot, right? If there's a treatment, if there's a cure, if you can treat this early and cure it, then there's no need for shots. There's no need for hospitalizations, ventilators, remdesivir. There's no need for any of that, right? So that their whole cash cow would just fall to pieces.
Yeah, I would recommend, and I've recommended this to a couple people who've reached out to me in regards to getting testing positive or being sick, and then being just looking for suggestions. I'm sure you've heard of it. Dr. Zelenko's product, the Z-Stack. It's a product. You can find it on his website, and it has basically a little bit of everything you need. And from just personal stories that I've heard, people seem to recover pretty quickly with it. So there are options out there. I mean, that's a huge part of it, is that when I remember when I had Dr. Peter McCullough on the first time, and Dr. Henry Ely. I mean, the fact that all these alternatives were being suppressed was the first indication that there was more going on, because obviously their intentions weren't to try to help people. And so yeah, well, without a doubt. I mean, the thing is too, and I just had Dr. James Lyons Wheeler on the last episode.
Yeah,
and I was talking to him about how how the war on coronavirus is almost like the war on terror, right? It's like this fantasy thing that you're never really going to stop. And because it's so vague, basically it just opens up the door for extreme government overreach and extreme government spending and all this other stuff. It really should be a war on COVID, the disease, because what we're doing is we're trying to stop the spread of a virus, one of many common viruses that we're probably exposed to on a daily basis all the time and are constantly in our system. And it's like we keep telling people that they're testing positive for COVID, which is the disease. But if you don't have COVID, the disease symptoms, you really don't have COVID. You're just testing positive for a virus. And it does seem like a wordplay and a great way of confusing people, and everybody's freaking out about testing positive. But it's like, if you don't have symptoms, you're not really sick. It's like, it's just so weird how, and it's confusing, because I think a lot of people who weren't in the medical freedom world, this was new to them. Most Americans were unhealthy. They didn't know much about immune systems. They didn't know much about just about how the body works. And then all of a sudden, everybody was kind of forced to learn a little bit about viruses and immune systems, just because it was obviously affecting everybody's life. The other thing about that you brought up, the critical race theory, I mean, that's a hot topic. And it's funny how like they try to paint a picture like it's just people overreacting and whatever, but it's not. Like, there's some serious issues. And there's a video you could still find on YouTube of Megyn Kelly being interviewed by Bill Maher. So you have somebody who's considered on the right, somebody who's considered on the left, and they're talking about how, and I don't know if you've seen this, but it was Megyn Kelly. She was purposely on the show to discuss taking her kids out of the private school she was in, and it was because of these issues. It was because they were asking just really inappropriate questions to the kids and making them feel guilty about their race or skin color and all this stuff. And I think they were asking questions like, how many of you feel like you're male or female, like really confusing the kids to some extent. And there's a difference between kids who are confused, who need guidance and helping them, and then confusing kids who aren't organically confused, because that's what seems like is going on. But my point of why I think that video is so important is because this issue has, just like COVID, it shouldn't be a political issue, but it's become a political issue where people, where you stand on this issue ends up creating the assumption that you're a part of a political party and against another political party. And it's like, so that video was important because Bill Maher, like I said, is on the left, Megyn Kelly on the right. And she was talking about how she was taking her kids out of the private school, thinking she could find a school that wasn't having similar issues. And it was a New York private school, and the public schools were having the same issues. She was talking to people all over the place, and everybody was having the same issues. She's like, she had nowhere to put the kids. They were all kind of pushing this ideology, and it's concerning. Even in my local town of Ludlow, Massachusetts, they had an issue with, I think, what the school committee calls LBG, whatever, friendly books in the library, and what they really were was basically cartoon porn. And with and it didn't matter if it was lesbians or gays or whatever type of cartoon porn it was. If it was straight cartoons with pornographic imagery, it would still be concerning and it would have no place in schools. So this whole idea of like it's about being sensitive to people's feelings, I mean, I relate to that. I was a metalhead growing up. I wore Metallica and Slayer and Iron Maiden shirts every day to school, Marilyn Manson shirts to school. I got in trouble a lot for, some of the shirts I would wear to school. And it's, I know what it's like to be an outsider. I know what it's like to kind of like go through phases in your life and trying to like search for, a identity or who you are, so I can relate with that. But to force feed any ideology. I mean, adults are absolutely taking advantage of children who are just lost, and some of them are lost. They need guidance, but we don't need to push them in any direction. We just need to help them find themselves. And a lot of the stuff, there's just no place for this stuff in schools. Like, let parents do their fucking job. Like, this whole idea of like sending your kids to school and then it's their responsibility to do the raising and the conversations about these topics is just, to me, is completely upside down. Like this wouldn't be an issue if parents actually took the initiative and understood that these type of topics and these type of subjects are the responsibility of the parents. It's not the state's responsibility. They can teach them academics, science, math, some history, as long as it's not pushing a agenda, because that's an issue too. But I mean, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, on everything I said, are you seeing this issue becoming a much bigger concern? And a question I get a lot from just friends and like, who's funding it? Like, who's pushing this ideology, and what is there to gain from it?
It's the same people pushing the COVID BS, right? It's the George Soroses, it's the people on the radical left that are pushing this and espousing these views, these Marxist indoctrination camps that they've created. They started in the colleges, right? That's where it started, and now they've moved on to doing it in the secondary schools, K through 12, and yes, K, even in kindergarten, with the critical race theory and with gender stuff and everything else. It's Marxism, and this is part of the plan. I talked to a gentleman. I was on a call the other day. I think it was last week. Actually, it was last Thursday night, to do just a discussion, a conference call about some of the stuff our organization is doing. And one of the gentlemen on the call, he's one of us now, but he was formerly in the 1980s. He was a Marxist activist. So it's really kind of interesting because he made the evolution from Marxism to more conservative constitutionalists and libertarian. And he said the scariest thing is that everything that we planned that I never thought would happen, like everything we planned in the 80s, and like the plan was to go into schools, go into colleges, and that's how we would get them. I never thought they'd pull it off. He said, but what I'm seeing now is exactly what we talked about. I'm seeing it play out exactly by the playbook that we talked about in the 1980s. And I thought that was just really eye-opening that because he was on the other side, on the inside. He was a major activist, Marxist activist, socialist. And they would talk about doing this stuff. Let's go into schools. Let's teach them about this. Let's divide, using race. Let's do all this stuff was planned. And he was on the inside there. So he'd actually be a really good one to interview sometime. If you'd like to talk to him, I can try to connect you and see if he's interested. He didn't volunteer his services for interviews because it was just like a private call, but I could certainly talk to him about it now that I'm connected. But we had an episode of our podcast. It's another thing we've been up to. We launched Faithful Freedom with Taryn Gregson, and today's episode, it comes out every Wednesday usually. Today's episode. And Taryn, by the way, is one of the people that we're defending. She was a PGA Tour reporter that was fired from her job for refusing the masking and testing mandates when she was 22 weeks pregnant, and they fired her. And so we're filing a lawsuit on her behalf as well, or we've funded her lawsuit, I should say. We the Patriots USA has fully funded that lawsuit. But she came aboard to be the host and executive producer of our first podcast called Faithful Freedom with Taryn Gregson, and she's awesome. She's just phenomenal. And today she had on her show Callie Fontanella, who's a high school or a former high school English teacher from California. She was actually just on Fox News the other day with Laura Ingram's show, and Taryn had her on the show today, and she talks about exactly what she saw. She's an African-American woman herself, and so she talks about basically how so much of this is just lies and indoctrination. Like the kids themselves don't even agree with it. They know it's BS. It's just the adults trying to push it on them, and how viciously she's attacked because of the color of her skin, because she doesn't march in line with the rest of them. Very much like what we've heard from Candace Owens, right? Because she's not in lockstep with their agenda. And they have this idea that if you have a certain skin color, you have to be a Democrat, or you have to believe certain things. You have to march with Black Lives Matter and all of that stuff. And Callie doesn't ascribe to that at all. So it's just very, very interesting. It was a great episode. You can check it out if you go to the We the Patriots USA Rumble channel. If it hasn't been taken off our YouTube channel, you can see it there. You can see it on Spotify, a lot of different platforms. But check it out. Faithful Freedom with Taryn Gregson. Also Taryn's channels. She has it on her own personal channels as well. But what you said a moment ago just kind of struck me when you're talking about, the kids aren't really confused, but they make them confused, right? So it's creating a problem and then providing them with their solution. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound familiar with the COVID stuff? It's the same exact thing. All right. And with healthcare in general. All right. The drug companies, pharma, will create the problem, will make you sick, right? With the shots, with vaccines, will make you sick. And then when you have all the adverse reactions, when you have lifelong disabilities because of the shots, now we've got a whole aisle in the grocery store, or aisles and aisles and aisles in the grocery store or the pharmacy, of all these products that you have to take both over the counter and not over the counter, that will prescription, that you'll be dependent on for the rest of your life. So it's the same thing. It just struck me when you were saying that. It's the same exact thing. So we're going to take kids that are perfectly healthy, that don't have many of whom don't have any mental health problems. Some of them do, but many of whom don't. And we're going to create a mental health problem, right? We're going to get them confused. We're going to indoctrinate them. We're going to tell them they should be reconsidering things like their gender. Like Callie said, she knows someone who's first grade or kindergartner came home. I think it was a kindergartner. Came home, a little girl, and said, "Mommy, I don't want to be turned into a boy. I don't want to turn. They're telling me I might turn into a boy. I don't want to turn into a boy." She was crying because of it. They created that problem. That child never would have thought it. Listen, here's the thing. Callie asked Taryn during that episode. I can't encourage you enough to watch it, but Callie asked Taryn while she was being interviewed. You always love that as an interviewer, right? When the guest starts interviewing you. But she was great. She said, "Taryn, when you were younger, did you ever have any classmates that said they wanted to be a boy when they were a girl, or vice versa?" "No," she said. "Did you have any of them that said, I want to be called they or them or theirs or something else? She said no. And she asked her a series of these similar questions. I think there were like 3 questions like that. And it's not what they tell you. Oh, well, it's just because they were too afraid to say it. None of them were thinking about it. Teenagers are extremely impressionable. Extremely impressionable. If you start telling them they should be thinking it and reconsidering things and thinking about things like their gender, then they will. If you tell them they should, then they will. If you never mention it, if it's not part of the conversation, most of them are never going to think about it. The vast majority are never going to think about that. All right. It's not something they would have you believe that it's common, right? That's the prevailing mindset. Like 90% of people are gender fluid. That's what they would have you believe. That is complete and utter bullshit. Okay. And I know I can swear on your show. All right. It is complete and utter bullshit. It's not the majority of people. And what you also see, and there's clear scientific evidence to back this up, is the majority of people who do have sort of what they used to call gender dysphoria. They still do. It's still in the DSM-5, I think. The majority of people who do have that also have a whole host of other mental health problems: bipolar disorder, severe depression, schizophrenia. There's usually a multitude of diagnoses that go along with it. But yet they will tell you this isn't one of those things, though. This is not a mental disorder. This is normal. This is like most people have this kind of thinking. And again, if you drill down, you see that a large majority of them have other mental health problems attended with that. And it's not just in things like, with anxiety or depression, they'll say, well, it's just because they're harassed so much. That's why they have anxiety and depression. But it's not just anxiety and depression. All right. There's a whole host of other things. Like I said, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, those things you don't get by being bullied. You don't just get schizophrenia because you're bullied. That's not how it works, folks. You don't have to be a psychiatrist or psychologist to know that. All right. So what does that tell you? It kind of raises a question that, well, you have a lot of other mental health issues, and now you're also having this issue. Maybe it could also be classified as a mental health issue. I personally do believe, it's my personal opinion, I believe it's a disability. So I don't believe people should be harassed for it or discriminated against for it if they're truly saying that they feel like they're a different gender. I don't believe they should be harassed, but I believe that it needs to be recognized as a mental disability. That is what I believe, and I'll take heat for saying that. I don't give a shit really, because this is still America, and we still have something called the First Amendment. And hey, I'm speaking for myself. I don't speak for anyone else right now. But it's the reality, Ricky, and tell me that you disagree.
Well, I don't know if it's I would have to really think about it, about a mental disability. I don't really have an issue with you, having that opinion, and I'm kind of neutral in regards to that. To me, it's like you're not forcing your opinion onto other people, and they're forcing their opinion onto other people, and that's what's concerning. There's I remember this from a long time ago. I had this guest who used to host a show with Brian Callen, named Hunter Motz. He wrote the book Straight A Conspiracy. Really intelligent guy. I remember him telling me the story about there's I think it's a movie, and let me see if I could. I searched it, and I think it's a movie. But you can, if you just look up Dr. Money and the Boy with No Penis. I think there's a documentary on it. There's a series on this story. And what it was this this twin baby got his penis burned off during circumcision, and I think they were experimenting with like some different way of circumcision or whatever, and then the parents found this doctor. His name was actually Dr. Money. That's not a made-up name. That's how weird this story is, and this is a true story. This guy, Dr. Money, basically convinced the parents that sex is a social construct, and that the best thing to do to avoid any psychological effects of being a boy without a penis is just tell him he's a girl, let him just raise him as a girl, and that's it. Well, that little boy had some mental issues and some psychological issues because he knew something wasn't right, and eventually he found out and had a tragic ending of him eventually committing suicide, I believe. But it was basically the parents who were convinced by this sexologist or psychologist, whatever the hell he was, that had this theory that it's like, oh, you could just raise him as a girl and that's fine, and he'll be more normal and whatever. And so that's the thing. Like, these discussions, like you said, which I think is really important, is need to be had, and they're so sensitive, people won't even have them. Like, to me, it's not about like where you stand or don't stand. Let's talk about it. I'm willing to have my ideas challenged. I'm willing to hear other people's perspectives, but let's have the discussion. My concern is that anybody who pushes back against any of this, and I see it even locally, like people who are at the school committee meetings and have these concerns, the actual school committee members, people in town, just paint them as racist or paint them as not sensitive to kids that are different or struggling through these things. And it's like, no, that's not what they're saying at all. And instead of like just painting that picture, how about we actually have a discussion about it? Because the truth is, kids shouldn't be making, especially with the hormone replacement thing. I have a huge issue with that, because like I always say, like, you see a kid who gets a tattoo at 18, you'll eventually see an adult who regrets that tattoo. Like, you shouldn't be making permanent decisions when you're still going through phases and trying to discover who you are as a person and all this stuff. So to give, and there's a huge percentage, and I don't have the percentage right in front of me, but there is a huge percentage of people who start this hormone replacement, which they eventually end up regretting it. I know people in my personal circle that are linked to people like that, who have been convinced that they want to do the hormone replacement and then now regret it, and those are permanent decisions. They're going to have messed up hormones, they're going to have messed up everything. They're
Ricky,
yeah,
God doesn't make mistakes, and when we start trying to play God, we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. And we can see that all throughout history. And it's not just, you can look at the Bible, but you can also look at history and the history of science. And, if we all need to go back and read Frankenstein again, right?
Well, they've done studies in regards to gender where boys like will just almost consistently be more attracted to like tools and weapons and stuff like that, and women, the thing about the nurturer thing, right? And it's funny because I tell my wife all the time, she's like, she's very politically neutral. She never paid any attention to politics or any of this stuff. I mean, most of her information comes from just hearing me discuss it, and she stays very neutral in regards to all this and very open-minded. But she's very anti-feminist because she doesn't like, she's not a fan of girl sports because she just thinks it's less entertaining, and she sees nothing wrong with women being mothers and embracing that. And I don't, when did it become a bad thing to like decide that you want to be a mom and not pursue a career? It's almost like it's looked down upon now, where it's like, oh, women can do anything guys can do. That's true, but there's nothing wrong with also embracing that most women have this incredible nurturing talent that is superior to most males. Like, and just like you've run an organization. I mean, anybody who's ever run a business, when you pick a partner or you decide to run a business, it's unlikely that you're going to pick somebody who has the same strengths that you have. You try to find somebody. It's like, okay, if I'm good with marketing, or if I'm good with I'm a good people's person, a good salesperson, then I'll take care of that. I'll get somebody who maybe doesn't have a great personality or isn't as social, but maybe a good numbers person, and we'll complement each other. Well, that's what Mother Nature basically has done. There's things that a male bring to the parenting job that is necessary and important, and then there's things that a woman brings. Neither of them are more important than the other.
Right. Different.
And we should embrace that both of them are crucial and important. We almost now live in this weird world where it's like, if you just discussing this, like it's like, oh, well, women shouldn't have to do this, or women should. It's like, you're right. Nobody's saying that. We're just saying that you guys have these amazing talents and do whatever you want with it, but you can't change the fact that women are naturally, and again, there's exceptions to every rule. Women are naturally, on average, better at the nurturing part of parenting. You you see it if you just look at your own personal life. It's common that you see somebody who maybe was raised by women. They're maybe softer, no offense, but the truth is, like, I know people in my personal life raised by women that they miss a little bit of toughness that the father would bring. And I also see the opposite, where somebody who maybe was missing a mother in their life, and then they're less likely to be able to talk about their feelings, or maybe they're a little colder, So there are things that people bring to the table. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, they're literally, like we've been saying, they're literally just ignoring all that and just confusing the shit out of everybody. And then just, I mean, to the point where now you look at where we're heading and it's like, okay, maybe that's a part of the plan. Like, confuse everybody, gender neutral nonsense, all this stuff. It's like, just goes, gender goes out the window, reality goes out the window, and next thing you know, we're buying property in the metaverse, and
Yeah.
and that seems like, it's kind of, all the pieces are kind of fitting together.
Yeah. Different doesn't mean less than, right? I mean, when did that ever become a thing, that if you're different, that means you're not as good? It's and I guess, again, there is this idea that, oh, well, you're forcing me into a role. Listen, I didn't make the roles and I didn't make the rules. God did. All right. And I get fired up, and, like I said, I swore a couple times but this is a righteous anger. This is a holy anger, because what you're doing is you're going against God. You're going against the way that God created this. All right. He did create male and female different. I'm sorry. They are telling me that they can compete in sports, that, if you have a transgender athlete, who's biologically a male competing in female sports, and that's no disadvantage. It clearly is. And you talked about your wife not liking women's sports, and I understand what she's saying, but by the same token, women's sports were created so that women could have a chance to compete and actually win things. Because if all sports were co-ed, guess what? 99% of the time, the guy's winning. All right. And it's just because that, all things being equal, you take a woman in perfect physical shape and a guy in perfect physical shape. The guy's got more strength. He's got more endurance. He's got more muscle. I mean, it's how the bodies are created. Sex is sex differences are biological. They're and they're chromosomal, as you know. I mean, it's XY versus XX. It's not something that we just invented. You can go down to the molecular level and see that. So don't tell me that there's no difference and it's all in your head. Again, that's bullshit, because it's scientific. And again, you can disagree with me all day long, and I'll have debates with people that disagree with me. That's fine. But don't tell me I don't have a right to my opinion. Don't tell me I'm not allowed to say something. All right. This is a free country. It still is. I believe that. I know some people are disagreeing with me on that one. But it is still a free country, and we should be able to have these discussions even when we disagree. But cancel culture won't do that. Cancel culture will take a soundbite of something that I say or that you say and demonize us, right? And say that, oh, because they said that, they're a horrible person because they have a different opinion than I do, or they're hateful, even though in the same interview, I said that you shouldn't discriminate or harass those people. Didn't I say that? They'll cut that part out, though, and they'll say, oh, he's advocating for, hate towards certain groups of people, which is just, again, this is the kind of stuff we have to wipe out. We don't have to wipe out different points of view. We need to wipe out the cancel culture. We need to stop having, that's what we need to fight against. So, anyone that wants to, make those kind of spurious claims against me or you, Ricky, they're going to be met with the full force of the law when we go after them, legally, with all of the legal recourse we have. And if you don't believe us, look at our track record. Look at the lawsuits we have all across the country. We've got damn good attorneys. The law firm of Patterson Smith. Norm Pattis is one of the best trial attorneys in this country. He's currently representing Alex Jones, as you probably know. He's a celebrity caliber attorney because he is at the top of his legal game. And so anybody that wants to meet Norm in court, go ahead, come after us, right? Because that's where you're going to find yourself. All right. So, we are not afraid. We speak out, we speak boldly, we speak truth, because we have truth on our side and justice on our side. And that's what We the Patriots USA is all about. We don't back down to anyone. Okay. So,
Bad ideas with good ideas. You don't like this whole idea of like canceling somebody or censoring somebody is just ridiculous. Like what you're doing is you're turning into a tribalistic extremist who says, yeah, anybody who disagrees with me, let's just and not just that, you're also assuming that you're correct on every issue. Because I mean, that's literally the definition of ignorance, is saying that I'm sticking to my guns, I'm ignoring any more information, and this is where I stand regardless. And it's like, if you're really open-minded, and then we should be hearing everybody out. I mean, I remember a while ago, this was that guy from the UK, Tommy Robinson, who's quite controversial to say the least. Well, Tommy Robinson, he was like banned off everything. And there's this RT, this was like at the height of him being banned everywhere. And there was this RT show, I think it was Worlds Apart, female host on RT America. And they interviewed him. They had him on the show and they talked about him being banned everywhere. And she disagreed with him on just about everything. And they had a really good discussion and disagreement. And it was really thought provoking and interesting, because you would hear the rebuttals and you hear their perspectives. And I'm like, if you disagree with this guy, that's exactly how you handle it. Like, you expose him and you expose the flaws in his thinking. And if you agree or disagree with them, that's how you handle things. And it's like this whole idea of like just canceling people. I mean, the whole Joe Rogan thing was just absurd. This idea that, now they're demonizing him or it's medical misinformation. It's like, wait, you do know he had Dr. Hotez on his show and he had Sanjay Gupta on the show. So I'm in recent history, the only people that he ever had on who was even close to anti-vax, and they're not even anti-vax. They're just anti the COVID vaccine. And I mean, I don't even know if Dr. Peter McCullough would go that far. He'd probably just state all the facts and concerns. But Dr. Robert Malone, who got the vaccine and been in the vaccine industry his whole life, and then you have Dr. Peter McCullough, who only states information and statistics and studies. Like, that's what you're calling anti-vax? Like, if anything, you could make the argument that Rogan's been too far in the other direction, where he's given too many people from the other side a voice and not enough people who, from the anti-vax movement a voice. So it's like, it's so obvious that they don't want the discussion. They just want to shut up anybody who they disagree with. So it's like this, it's a facade, this illusion that it's like, that they want things to be down the middle and be, it's like, it's just so silly.
No, there's no such thing as true diversity and inclusion. They call it DEI, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's one of the buzz acronyms that's going around now. But it's ridiculous. It's smoke and mirrors, because what it is in reality is, no, we'll gather a bunch of people together that look different. They might come from different backgrounds, but they all have to think the same and say the same things. They're not going to have, there's no diversity, equity, inclusion committee or group of people that I've ever come across that actually has people with real diversity of thought, that has real conservatives and libertarians sitting on the committee. They're all liberal. They're either far left liberal or just sort of left liberal. But maybe even a couple of moderate liberals, but even that's rare. But that's it. They're all on one side of the aisle. That's all these committees have on them. They don't ever have, and if they do, maybe they'll throw a bone. Maybe there's somewhere where they'll have like one person from the other side. Oh, that's a fair fight, right? You've got a committee of like 10 people, and one of them it has a different point of view. That's how they stack the deck. So if they do occasionally allow someone from the other side, it's like 10-1. So that's not a real voice. It's not like a real committee of strong conservative voices and strong liberal voices together. Listen, We the Patriots Youth, and I'm here myself. I'm just Brian tonight, but the organization that I run, We the Patriots USA, is nonpartisan. We're a 501c3. We're a nonprofit. So in most cases, if you donate to our organization, it's tax deductible. I know we're kind of running towards the end here, so I will just make a little pitch that we do rely exclusively on public funding, on donations for our funding. We don't have any private streams of income. We don't have these angel investors swooping in to fund our organization. It's just regular people like you listening who can support our organization, who like the work that we're doing, who like that we fight back, who like that we don't buy into this cancel culture. We stand up for what's right. We're not going to fit into their box. Okay, we don't do that. The only box we fit into is freedom, and that's what it's about. It's individual rights, it's freedoms. That's what this country was built on, and we're going to continue fighting that on all fronts. Like I said, not just medical freedom, although that's a big one for us. Religious freedom, First Amendment rights. I'm talking a lot tonight about speaking out. I didn't really know what we were going to talk about. Well, it's always something different every time I come on, Ricky. I didn't know we were going to talk so much about the transgender stuff, and then free speech rights. But that's fine, because that's a big part of what we do, is fighting against cancel culture, fighting against these indoctrination camps, which the public schools have become. They're nothing more than indoctrination camps. You really, and it was never more apparent than during these last 2 years what these schools have become, with masking of children, forcing them to, and Callie, I keep going back to that interview with Taryn today because I listened to it earlier. Callie said it best during that interview. She said, I used to have students that would say, schools like prison, schools like prison. You have these rules to follow, and I can't go here, I can't go there. School's like a prison. And I used to tell them, oh, come on, you're crazy. School's not anything like prison. She said, but now it really is. All right. You all have to wear a mask. You're suffocated all day. You have to stay 6 feet apart. You can't talk to your friends. You violate the rules. You come too close to somebody, and all of a sudden you're thrown out. You're constantly being watched and guarded. If you pull down that mask just under your nose, oh no, you can be written up for that. I mean, really, and they've got kids so gripped by fear, and everything is so strict that it's not about learning anymore, to the extent that it really has been ever. I mean, in a long, long time, it hasn't been. Public schools are really, and listen, you're talking about someone who used to be a teacher. Okay. You're talking to someone who used to be a teacher. I'm not saying there aren't good educators out there. I'm not saying there aren't people who really and truly love what they do and want to teach kids, want to educate kids, not for any agenda, just because they want to teach them and help them grow and help them, become productive members of society and everything else. There are a lot of people like that out there. I'm not saying all teachers are bad, or even that most are, but they're not the ones making the decisions about the curriculum. You see, they're not the ones. It's not your frontline teachers who are making the decisions about this curriculum in most cases. All right. This is an agenda, just like what came down with COVID was an agenda. This was an agenda planned by the global elite a long, long time ago, and it's a Marxist agenda. And so that's what's happening. And we are here to fight it, though. If anyone's listening to this and they agree with what I'm saying, you don't have to agree with everything I said, but if you agree with anything that I said, anything at all, and you want to support that cause, you can do it through wethepatriotsusa.org. We have a donate tab at the top. For the critical race theory, we have a special fundraiser just for that. It's givesendgo.com/fight CRT. Givesendgo.com/fight CRT. We do need donations for that. And then we have another one specifically to fight all the COVID mandates called Stop the Shot Mandates and More. And that's gogetfunding.com/stop the shot. gogetfunding.com/stop the shot. You can put those links in, Ricky, when you post it, if you would. And that way people can go there as well as to our website and check it out, all the different options, whatever you'd like to support, and tell your friends about it. I mean, because again, they have censored us so much. We've been kicked off of a lot of platforms. I mean, we are on Telegram. We the Patriots USA and Telegram. We have a great Telegram channel that my business partner and friend Don Jolly runs. We have we're on Getter, we're on Gab, we're on I said Rumble already. I mentioned some of the different platforms. We still do have Facebook and Twitter, but we've been kicked off. We've been shadow banned there. I mean, it's almost impossible to see anything that we post. So because of the censorship, it's really just word of mouth. That's why I call on everyone who hears us and wants to support us, tell people about us. We need that army behind us, because the people on the other side, they're fierce. They are fierce. And when I say the other side, again, I don't mean other side of a political aisle, because there's bad actors in both major parties. Okay, it's not just Democrats. But the people who are the oppressors, the people who are anti-freedom is what I mean. They're fierce, and they will do anything they can to destroy your life if you oppose them. And we recognize that. So that's why we've spent a lot of time building, like I said, a very, fierce legal team. We have attorneys, not just Patterson Smith, although they are our lead attorneys. We have attorneys all throughout the country in our network who are ready to back us up and who are joining forces with us. That was like the first thing that we did, is got a very, very strong legal team together. I'm an attorney myself. We got a very, very strong legal team together, because we realize you get involved in this stuff. Not only are we going to have to fight it, with our own lawsuits, fighting all the injustices that we see, but also to defend ourselves, because we know that they're coming for anyone who speaks truth. Anyone. That's not, and it's not just us. It's anyone out there, including you, Ricky. Anyone who speaks truth is going to get harassed, is going to get attacked in every way that they possibly can. So, but you know who to call, Ricky, if they do come after you. We are here for you.
Yeah, well, I'm in the process of getting much more involved locally. I've had the local Republicans and groups of parents, concerned parents, that contacted me and just want to support me and whatever. And I've been asked a bunch of times, they're like, what are you? And I'm like, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm like, I'm just an open-minded, curious person who's willing to look at things logically. And that's it. I don't subscribe to any one ism, but that I think, making it political, just like a lot of these issues, it helps with just divide and conquer. It helps with just dumbing down the conversation. People can't even have the conversation, everything. And then everybody just feels like they're going to be name call, they'll be called a name if they even question things. When the women's soccer players, the USA women's soccer players, first of all, they're amazing athletes, amazing players, and they want to get paid as much as the men. Or anytime you see that type of stuff, it's like, if you openly say, hey, it's based on ratings, and the way capitalism works is like, if you get more ratings than the males, then you're going to make more money. Like, there's nothing to do with paying you less just because you're a female. Like, you can't even have that discussion, or many people won't even have that discussion openly, because they're worried that they're going to be called something, and they're going to be, and it's like, hey, a huge portion of the population are women. How about you convince those women to watch you? The ratings go up and you get paid more. That. So it's like, maybe be mad at your own, your own gender. But the thing is, like, I never stray away from having the discussion, and I never I never say I know anything. Like, it's like I'm constantly evolving and learning. At the moment, it's like, this is what makes the most sense to me. But the thing is that the thing that makes me the most upset is that most people who agree with me are the ones who want to have the discussion. And I want to have the discussion with people who disagree with me, because if flaws in my thinking, if there's flaws in my logic, I want them to be exposed. But they won't. Like, you see it over and over again. I see people online who are opinionated and well, they're keyboard warriors, and then they're the same ones who name call and don't actually want to have a discussion. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want, it's like, they just want to name call. They want to call you a racist or a this or a that. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, like, we're all people. And again, racism is taught. You're not born racist. My kids have Asian friends, they have Lebanese friends, they have Black friends, Hispanic friends. They don't give a fuck. They don't care. They'll play with anybody. When one of their friends come over, I don't care what color they are. It's like, they're friendly. We all get along.
Right. But that's not good, Ricky. They'll tell you that's not good, that you're saying you don't see color, or you're not gonna focus on the color, because that means you're a racist. exactly the opposite of what Dr. King said. All right. He said that he dreamt of a time when you'd be judged by the content of your character, not the color of your skin. They don't agree with that anymore. I actually had someone say to me, someone who's, very much into this woke culture, say to me that no, I disagree with what he said. He's wrong. We shouldn't just be focusing on the content of the character. We should focus on the color of the skin. That's their ideology now. They think we should focus on that, and they think that we're just lying if we say we don't see color. Well, listen, obviously we see color, but that's not what we mean when we say we don't see color. What we mean is we don't focus on it and obsess about it like they do. Yeah, I realize your skin's darker, but that doesn't all of a sudden make me start thinking things about you and acting different towards you like they say it does. Again, they create these constructs to divide. That's their plan. And Callie said it. It's another great line. I'm giving it all away. You won't have to watch it after you get done with me, but but please do tell everyone to watch it. She said, America today is more racist than it was 20 years ago. It's more racist because of this supposed anti-racism agenda that they've put on, and we're seeing the fruits of it now that they've put forth with Black Lives Matter, with critical race theory. That's developed to make people to create more division among the races. That's the purpose. They say the purpose is the opposite, to create racial harmony, but they know that that's not what's going to happen. They know it's going to divide and make there be even more racism. So there is more racism today, but it's not because of some, stuffy old white men, okay, who are making racist policies in some castle or something, in some mansion, like Mr. Burns or something, like they try to portray it. Those aren't the people that are dividing the country, and it's not Donald Trump or anyone else. Okay, the people that are dividing the country are the people who are putting forth things like critical race theory and putting forth things like diversity, equity, and inclusion committees. They're creating more racial division because they know that kind of talk, you're pitting, there's white people and then there's everybody else. All right. And there's revisionist history. I'm glad that when you mentioned about teaching history, well, or at least some of it, you caught yourself there, because history is a dangerous subject when you start writing it yourself. Okay. History is fine if you actually just relate what actually happened. But when you start putting your own thoughts and your own perspective on what you think happened, or what, some college professor said happened, even though he's got no proof, just making stuff up because they want to create this picture that America has always been racist and that it's the white Americans that have always been racist. They won't tell you about the fact that, as Callie said, again, and again, this is fresh on my mind, that certain tribes like the Cherokee had 25,000 slaves, okay, themselves, Black slaves. All right, they don't talk about that because that doesn't fit their narrative, right? They will only focus on the fact that white people had slaves. They won't talk about the people in Africa, actually, that had even more slaves than the white people did, and that sold their own people to the Europeans, okay, and to Americans.
Throughout history, there's discrimination and there's people conquering other people over and over and
right.
over.
But it's only white European settlers that did bad. In their book, they're the only ones. It's Christopher Columbus, people like him. That's it. No one else ever had slaves. No person of color, as they say, ever had slaves. And Callie calls them out for that term as well, saying it's just a rebranding of a colored person, which is not PC anymore. You can't say that. They've just flipped it, and so they're still using the same terminology, which she takes issue with as a person of color herself. Okay, so listen, again, it's all part of their agenda. This was planned a long time ago. Like my new friend that I just talked to the other night said, in the 1980s, and even before that, before he was involved in it, they were planning it. They've planned this for decades and decades, and now you're seeing the fruits of it. And one of the ways, I'll just conclude with this because I know we're out of time. One of the ways they won was in the courts. The people who have funded this Marxist agenda, they have done it through the schools, as I said, that's number one, and number two, through the courts. through legislating through the courts is what they've tried to do, to create this body of case law in the courts. They've put so much money. I have a good friend who's a philanthropy specialist, and she said, Brian, the people, the conservative crowd, the people on the right, they have always, for years and years and years, for as long as she's been in it, like 3 decades, they do not fund litigation. They won't throw a dime at a lawsuit. But the people on the left put almost all their money there. And look at the results. Look at where we are now. So if, for those of you out there that may be hesitant, for those of you who want to defend freedom, but you're hesitant to put your money behind a lawsuit, look at the results they've gotten funding lawsuits over the last 5 decades, especially the last 5 decades. Look at the results they've gotten. You have a decision like Roe v. Wade in 1973, and we may be seeing a change in that coming up, but with this Mississippi case, but you have a decision like that stood really for almost 50 years because of one decision. So you win one Supreme Court decision, it's generational. It's your kids and your grandkids are going to be living under that law. Okay, lawsuits are extremely important and extremely expensive. So consider that when you're hesitant. The people who are listening, who are maybe from the more conservative or more, I don't like to say conservative, more freedom-minded people, liberty-minded people that don't want to put their money towards lawsuits. Look at how the Marxists have done it. Look at how the ACLU, how many lawsuits they filed. All right. And that's how they've been successful in changing the face of America, changing American values, really, through the courts. They've done it through the courts because they knew they couldn't get it done through Congress or through the executive branch. They did it through the courts. So we have to start doing the same. We have to get back to the vision of the founding fathers, get back to what this country was founded on: American values, faith, freedom.
Yeah. And, and the thing is, it's not to say that there isn't discrimination and racism in the world. There absolutely is. But people discriminating. I mean, I live in a town called Ludlow outside of Springfield, Massachusetts, and it's majority of Portuguese and Polish people. All the construction companies are basically Portuguese. And if you're looking for a job or you're looking for an apartment, you want to rent a place or whatever, you want to do anything in Ludlow, you better have a Polish or Portuguese last name or know somebody who does or be related to somebody. Like, that's kind of discrimination. But a lot of it is also because naturally we are more comfortable with people that are similar to us because we will have more in common. We can connect in a certain way. So that happens all the time. And that happens in all different cultures. It happens inside cultures. If I'm at a party where it's me and one other Portuguese person who happens to be from the Azores, if we're the only 2 Portuguese people there, we might connect. But if we're at a Portuguese party and I'm from the mainland and he's from the Azores, he's from the islands, all of a sudden there's a divide. All the people from the Azores are going to connect and all the people from the mainland, you see with Italians, you see it with, it's like, you see it with all over the place. I see it with my Spanish friends who have light skin. They make fun of the light skinned Spanish people. And it's like, oh, you don't even look Spanish. Look, you're whiter than, a white guy. It's like, there's discrimination everywhere.
Yes.
That's why it reminds me of that movie. Remember that movie Crash? It's a little bit older.
Yes.
But it was like a perfect example of, and it really did a great job of kind of painting the picture of like, okay, this person's being discriminated against and being judged maybe by their appearance. And unknowingly, they're doing the same to some other group of people. You have the Middle Eastern convenience store owner who people are discriminating against or maybe being racist against, and then he's racist towards the African-American kids who come in his convenience store. It's like, and it's just this cycle, like, and it's a little bit isn't truly, I think, evil. I think naturally we do. If I see another kid wear, another guy wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, I naturally know we have something in common. I might connect with this guy. I'm more attracted to that person than somebody who I don't have anything in common with. So that happens all the time. Asian people are more likely to hire Asian people at their restaurants. It just, we're tribal beings, and if we have something in common, we will connect with those more. It doesn't, it happens in all aspects. And when I look at like the NBA, for example, like you said, I love the way you said the way you eliminate racism is not even putting any emphasis on it. I look at the Boston Celtics. I don't care how many black people are on the team or how many white people are on the team. I just care if there's good players or bad players. You know, when I look at the Portuguese national soccer team, they're people who are darker skinned, people who are lighter skinned. They're all Portuguese. They all represent the country. I don't care. You know, when they're singing the national anthem, they're all Portuguese. You know, they all speak the same language. We grow up in the same culture. We have those similarities, and that's what brings us together and creates that connection, and that culture that we're representing. So it's like, you know, putting an emphasis on like, hey, there's not enough white people or black people in this. There's too many white people. Or there's not enough Asian people in this. And Asia, it's like, if anything, like putting that much attention on race at all is counterproductive. What you should be doing is saying like, let's not emphasize race at all. And whoever's the best at that job should get that job. Whoever's the best at that thing, you know, that has, you know, if it happens that African Americans are the best at this sport, that just happens that, like, it's not because of racism. It just happens that it could be cultural. It could be being raised in a house where they love that sport. You know, you see it in all types of
Right.
sports. In hockey, you see Eastern Europeans and Canadians. So it's like in soccer, you know, some of the best players are Europeans or South Americans. Like, it's not because it's racist. It's because it's a cultural thing much of the time. You know, a lot of convenience store owners are Lebanese or Pakistani. It's not because racism is filtering out all the white people. It's because they grow up in a culture where they have family members who are good at running that type of business. They have the know-how. They know how to do it. And then they get attracted to that. Portuguese people and Italians, naturally, we're raised knowing how to pour concrete because a lot of us have family members that have construction companies or whatever, you know, and you get raised in that culture. I think it's sometimes a simple answer to just say it's racist. Racist is the reason why there's more of these type of people and less of those type of people. It's like, no, that's not always the case. And
yeah, it's a cop out.
Yeah, it's a cop out. And I think, you know, the important thing is, like you said, and you know, it reminds me of like what Brian Rose would say to David Icke every time he has him on the show. He says, he's like, I might not agree with everything you say, but I will defend your right to say it. And that's the most important thing, is you don't have to agree with somebody. You don't, but we should defend everybody's right to say nobody should be canceled. Nobody should be, you know, you look at talking about organizations, look at Midas Touch and Patriots Take, who were responsible for Rogan's N-word montage going viral. It was a extreme left organization. If you go to patriotstakes.com, it literally says on the front page, like their purpose is to fight right-wing extremists. So you already decided that this super PAC has a ideology that they're pushing on you, and anybody who doesn't fit in that box is a enemy. And it's like, you know, and then you try to character assassinate them, which I hope all the Rogan fans realize now, that when you hear when you quickly think like, okay, Andrew Wakefield's anti-vaxxer, Judy Mikovits is an anti-vaxxer, Robert Kennedy Jr. is anti-vaxxer, and you just think they're tinfoil hat conspiracy theory anti-vaxxers, you realize like, okay, now you have an example of somebody like Joe Rogan. If you listen to his show, you realize like, no, he's had people from all aspects of life, all different ideologies.
Yep.
You can't just put him in a box and paint
He's
him.
not really a conservative either.
No. I mean, he's a hippie with a gun. Like, he's you know, he likes guns, and he's conservative on some things, and he's liberal on other things. And yet they character assassinate him. They say that he's alt-right, this and that. So I hope this wakes people up to the idea of like, okay, what happened to Rogan? The way that they can misrepresent who he is. Maybe you'll think twice when you hear you know, the media call somebody else an anti-vaxxer, and you just assume that they're correct and you don't look into their story. I talked about this with Dr. Jack yesterday in regards to like Andy Wakefield. Like, when you look into his story, you're like, well, he's not anti-vax at all. Like, his story wasn't even vaccine related, and you know, he just kind of like led into this, you know, his journey kind of led into this path. But it's not like he was always this anti-vax person, and yet the media, the way they paint him, you would assume that he's this crazy conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer. Same thing with Dr. Judy Mikovits. Same thing with a lot of these people. So
no, yeah, we didn't plan this path. I got into this because, as you know, my son got seriously injured, and so I agree. I see what you're saying about Dr. Jack. He said to me once, he I'll never forget a story. I picked Dr. Jack up from the airport once because he was coming here to do an event in Connecticut. This is a couple of years ago, and he's making jokes like, "Hey, did you dig the hole big enough?" Whatever for me. Because he didn't know me at that point. Some guys just picking me up at the airport in Hartford. I don't know who you are. And but then we're driving, and he said, "I never thought my life would be this interesting." Just he's flying all over the country. He's speaking. He's doing this. He's a scientist, right? He thought he'd be stuck in a lab his whole life or teaching or whatever. And now he's speaking truth. He's dedicated his life to defending the truth, really, much like I have, like you have, Ricky. And don't underscore the importance of what you do, because we talked about free speech a lot and how important it is to this country. And that's what you're doing. I mean, that's what that microphone in front of you and in front of me represents. All right, is the ability to speak truth, to speak your mind, to speak your opinions even freely without fear of reprisal. So I know you like to pat, people like me and Judy and Jack and, on the back and say you're on the front lines, but you're on the front lines too, because if we don't have voices, if we don't have real media, real independent media that reports all different perspectives, because you've interviewed people too that have different perspectives than you. I even have some different perspectives, as I learned tonight, than you do, but that's good. Okay. That's healthy. It doesn't mean we can't be friends. All right. It doesn't mean that we can't agree on a lot of things and disagree on other things. That's okay. Normal adult human beings, that's how they behave in a society anyway.
Well, that's why I always say I'm here to build bridges, not burn them. And let's find the things we agree with, and then we'll find out like, oh, we're actually fighting for the same things, and we can be friends even if we disagree on stuff. Rogan might disagree with many conservatives who now see him as a spokesperson for their, for their things that they're fighting for, but that's what we should be doing. Like the divide and conquer works. If we all just fight among ourselves, the agendas and the elite, they're just going to keep doing what they're doing, and all of us will be focused on the wrong people when really we should be focused on them. And without a doubt, I mean, it's so important to realize, like, we can have a lot of differences, but we all basically want the same shit. We all, want the same thing. And I, without a doubt, will defend your right to have your opinions and discuss your opinions. And maybe I'll challenge your opinions, but we'll have a friendly discussion. And after it's said and done, I'll still love you as a human being and know you're a good person who cares and and we'll just have a slight different opinion. But having those discussions are important, and that's what we should be doing, is looking at everybody as people with just different opinions, instead of looking at people with different opinions as they're the enemy. And it's just that's what they've done. So and we're all a part of this. We're all contributing. I think the waking up that we're seeing now, and we're all contributing to it, for all the work you guys do. Dr. Jack, Dr. Judy Mikovits, Mickey Willis, all the Del Bigtree. I mean, it's just endless amounts of names I could mention that have helped with little by little waking people up in the world and realizing that we're in some serious crazy times and we need to do something about it, or it's just going to keep getting worse. So and we'll keep on fighting, and hopefully people do support your work. They support ICANN and all the great organizations and podcasters and content creators out there who are helping just get this information out there and are agenda free, in regards to like any behind the scenes agenda. It's like, what you see is what you get. This is who we are. This is what we believe. This is what we're fighting for. And I think people really appreciate that honesty and knowing who they're supporting. So So yeah, thanks, Brian. Thanks again for catching up. Hopefully we talk again in the near future. I'll put email me any links you want in the show description specifically. And it's funny because you keep talking about that podcast, and I was actually listening to it because it was just uploaded today, a couple hours before we started recording, and so I did start listening to it, and so I'll have to finish it.
Yeah, it's a great one. She's got some great. She interviewed Dr. McCullough as well. I had been connected with him through you, I think, actually originally, and then I passed him along to Taryn. So she interviewed him, and she's got some great episodes coming up. Some really, really powerful guests that she has interviewed and that she will interview. So check it out. But yeah, it's always a pleasure, Ricky. Invite me back anytime. I'd be glad to come on.
Do you have a Substack also?
We do not right now.
It's funny, Dr. Jack, he suggested it to me because I know Dr. Jessica Rose and a lot of other people that I've talked to now are really big into that. Dr. Pierre Corey, and he's
Aaron
like,
Siri has one too.
Yeah, and he's like, why don't you just post your podcast on it? And I'm like, that's actually a really good idea because, like you were saying, with the lack of places where they let us have open discussions, I will post on any platform anywhere. My show is going to be on Iconic next month. It's going to start being on Iconic. It's recently now posting on Band.video. I'm on Rumble. I'm on Minds. I'm on Rockfin. I'm on Odyssey. I'm on Float. I'm on every single platform. If people, any platform that will let me put these conversations out there, I will post my stuff on there. Like you said, that since I got deleted off YouTube, much like yourself, I've been shadow banned. Before, you could just put in my name or put in the name of the show, and the website would immediately come up. All my channels would immediately come up. Now Google and YouTube are doing a good job of suppressing not just my show, but anybody who is having similar discussions. Yep. So it's word of mouth goes a long way. I tell people, share the show, tell people about the show. It seems like a silly little thing. It's like, oh, I only have a couple followers, but it's like that follower will share with a handful of people, and it just keeps on going. So we can all do our part. Like I tell people all the time, if you can't financially support the show, try to support the show in other ways by reviewing, your podcast, writing a nice review, telling people about the podcast or your organization, and hopefully somebody who can financially support the show will be exposed to it. So we're all doing our part, and we'll keep fighting. Things do look optimistic a little bit, with we're almost trending in the right direction a little bit. Maybe it's just me looking at the glass.
Well, no. You're not seeing things, but a lot of us have a theory that that's part of their plan, is especially because it's an election year, is to give us a little reprieve, let us believe that we're winning, and then when we least expect it, when we let our guard down, that's when they're going to hit us with the next big wave, the next big variant, the next big virus, whatever they come up with. So please, my advice to everyone: do not let your guard down. Don't take your pedal off the metal, because this is when we can win it. They want us to back down, to think, oh, look, things are finally going back to normal. We can sort of we don't have to, fight as hard as we have been anymore. Because everybody's waiting for that, right? Everybody just wants that breath of being able to say, just to let out that breath. Now I can be a human again. I can be a person again. I can just be a dad again. I can just be a husband again, whatever. I don't have to be a fighter all the time. That's what everybody wants, and they know that. So they're giving us a little bit of that wiggle room, and look like they're letting things up. Don't let your guard down.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end it. Yeah, without a doubt, do not let your guard up, and do not stop fighting, even when things seem normal or more normal. Remember that there's plans and there's things going on behind the scenes. And if you wait till it's too late, the same thing will happen, where we'll end up being in a really shitty situation. So thanks, Brian. Hope everything's well with you and your family. We'll talk again in the near future. Take care.
All right, talk soon. Bye-bye.